Survival shows used to be a guaranteed way to succeed in the K-pop industry, with Twice, Stray Kids, Winner, iKON, and more being formed from these shows. And of course, we can't forget the iconic Produce series, which created legendary groups like IOI, 101, and IZ*ONE. Granted, these shows all had their fair share of controversies, but we cannot deny the impact that they had on the music industry. With millions of viewers tuning into every episode, the winners on these shows were seemingly propelled to superstardom overnight, and even trainees who didn't win were still able to get their names out there, with many amassing huge fan bases through their appearances. But that was like 10 years ago, and these days, K-pop survival shows have devolved into something else completely, with numerous low-budget, exploitative, and downright dark audition programs seemingly popping up every day. In fact, in just the past year alone, there were over a dozen survival shows, a majority of which I can guarantee you've probably never heard of. Which is why today, professors, we're gonna be exploring this phenomena of low-quality K-pop survival shows, and taking a look at the worst of these shows to have aired in recent times. And trust me, they're really bad. In case you were wondering, yes, I personally watched all of these shows myself so that you don't have to, and yes, I wish I could get those hours back. But hey, at least it was all worth it thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Fashion Chingu. Want to dress like your favorite K-pop stars? Well, Fashion Chingu is the perfect online store to help you recreate K-pop and K-drama outfits on a budget. Let me show you how it works. As you can see, their website sorts out the clothes into different collections based on the artists, such as the Baby Monster collection, the IVE collection, the aespa collection, etc., which just makes it super easy for you to find the outfits worn by your favorite artists. So today I'm wearing this top that is similar to a top worn by aespa's Ningning, as well as these jeans that were worn by TXT's Yeonjun, which I've been absolutely loving. I also often use Fashion Chingu to get many of my outfits for my dance covers. And honestly, if any of you guys also do K-pop dance covers, trust me, Fashion Chingu is the holy grail for stage outfits. The best part is, Fashion Chingu is having a Cyber Monday sale right this moment, where you can get a 20% store-wide discount if you use my coupon code PLUPY5. So what are you waiting for? Be sure to check out Fashion Chingu today, and without further ado, let's get back to today's video. Okay, so I was thinking about how to best approach this video, right? And I figured, what better way to count down the worst survival shows than to do it in a survival show format? Which is why, in third place, we have a survival show known for its low budget.
걱정하지 마. 우리가 상관없잖아.
Congratulations to TimeTurner. TimeTurner is a show that's currently airing on TikTok Live, with the aim of creating a 5-member girl group from a pool of 19 contestants. The show first began on the 8th of November and is set to air its final episode on the 22nd, which, if you're keeping track, means that it'll only be running for a total of 2 weeks, making it probably the shortest K-pop survival show ever. And honestly, thank God for that, because I don't even need to finish watching this series to tell you that it's absolute trash. For some background, this show was produced by the music crowdfunding site Makestar as well as Pie Company, which is home to singers such as Queen Wasabi and Kwon Hee-jun. Ever heard of them? Well, neither have I, and therein lies the problem. Pie Corporation is not a well-known music agency. In fact, they're arguably not a music agency at all, with their own website describing them as a leader in short-form marketing. AKA, they're basically a TikTok agency. And let's just say you can definitely tell based on the contestants they recruited for their show. Now, to preface, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with recruiting TikTokers if they're talented. And sure, they managed to get Leah Navab, who by the way is Kai and Bahia's sister, as well as a few other talented contestants. But for the most part, a majority of the girls were all clearly recruited just because they were famous TikTokers and little else. I mean, out of the 18 contestants, a vast majority of them clearly couldn't sing. And that's putting it lightly.
Hey, I just met you. Wow, this is crazy.
In fact, many did not sing at all throughout the entire show, choosing instead to only focus on dance. And perhaps some of them might have been good dancers, but unfortunately, it was kind of hard to tell thanks to the absolutely awful camera work. Like damn, even amateur fan cams are better than this. On the other hand, there were a few contestants who could sing, but they had zero dance skills and were clearly not ready to be in a K-pop group. Only a small handful of contestants could actually sing and dance, but sadly, even these promising performances were completely wrecked thanks to the horrific sound quality. I mean, just listen to this. But the levels of talent amongst the contestants was honestly the least of TimeTurner's problems. Now, I haven't really heard anyone else talk about this, but personally for me, a much bigger red flag was actually the show's voting system. For starters, the first round of voting, brace yourselves for this, actually took place on freaking Google Forms. I'm not even joking, guys. And things only went from bad to worse in the rest of the voting rounds, with viewers having to cast votes in the form of paid TikTok gifts.
If you're cheering for Team Boba, send one of the 5 stickers shown on the screen.
And sure, I understand that these small companies have to find ways to make money off their survival shows, but the most annoying part was just how blatantly greedy they were about it all. You see, instead of just having one round of voting per episode, TimeTurner would purposely cram numerous rounds of voting into each episode by creating tons of unnecessary challenges, thereby forcing fans to have to buy votes for each challenge in order to keep their favorite contestant in the lineup. Let me give you an example. In episode 4, for instance, the 6 eliminated contestants were given a chance to revive themselves, with the 2 most popular of these eliminated contestants supposedly being given a second chance to return to the competition. Now, of course, the most straightforward way to do this would be to get all the eliminated contestants to perform, get everyone to vote, and then pick the 2 eliminated contestants with the highest number of votes. But do you think that's what they did? Why, of course not. Instead, they made all the contestants perform once, got everyone to vote, and then picked only 1 contestant to return to the show. Then they reset all the vote counts to 0 and got the remaining 5 contestants to go through another round of voting to pick the second contestant. If that isn't vote farming, then I don't know what is. Because of all of these unnecessary voting rounds, each episode dragged on for upwards of 4 hours, complete with awkward silences
네.
and minutes of waiting around.
Take your time. Okay, take your time.
I was bored out of my mind. And the worst part was, despite squeezing their audiences dry with TikTok gifts, not even a dime of this money seemed to be invested back into the show. I mean, unlike most normal survival shows, they didn't even bother to hire mentors to provide any form of coaching to the trainees. The entire show was a live stream format, so there were almost no editing costs, and every single episode was plagued with a multitude of technical issues. Earpieces were not working, the audio quality was dismal, and considering how bad some of the camera angles were, I'm convinced that they probably just found a random staff member to film the entire series on their phone. Overall, it's obvious that TimeTurner is nothing more than a cash grab for MakeStar and Pi Corporation. It's a zero-budget, zero-effort survival show. And sadly, I can only assume that the final group's debut is going to turn out the same way. Or maybe the producers will just use their MakeStar platform to haggle fans out of even more money. Who knows? Moving on to second place. This show has made headlines for its cruelty.
Oh, that definitely sounds like idol school.
And is known for discriminating against certain trainees.
应该是 Girls Planet 吧
Produce 48 no hazunano.
It's Starlight Boys. Starlight Boys is a unique case because unlike the other low-effort shows on our list, the Starlight Boys is actually a well-put-together show in terms of its budget and production. In fact, it was created by SBS and iQIYI, which are two massive broadcasting stations in Korea and China respectively. Not only did they have a star-studded panel of judges, including Yi Seung-gi, Eun-bi, Big Bang's Daesung, Pentagon's Hui, and Stacey's Yoon, the contestant pool also consisted of many high-profile trainees, including Yi Han-gil from X1, as well as members from Fantasy Boys and the Chinese boy band X-Form. So when the series first debuted on the 26th of October, it looked like things were off to a great start. However, just 2 episodes in, and all of the excitement surrounding this show has since turned to anger, with many even calling Starlight Boys the most cruel survival show ever. So what happened? Well, right from episode 1, controversy erupted when Sho, a Japanese-American trainee, performed alongside Ryo Kaito, a Japanese-Chinese trainee. The pair put on what many would consider a decent performance. I mean, they were fairly synchronized, they sang in tune, their facial expressions were good, and so everyone was expecting them to get good comments from the judges. But surprisingly, they were hit with very harsh feedback. Sho, in particular, was torn apart by the judges, who stated that they were especially disappointed with his performance because he, quote, looked like a good dancer.
정말 춤 잘 출 거라 사실 기대를 너무 많이 해서 그런지 춤을 아예 안 배운 것 같고 기본기가 없더라고요.
In response, Sho revealed that he had never received any formal dance training, and this was actually his first time singing while dancing at the same time, which if anything actually impressed many participants and viewers as it revealed Sho's potential for growth. But strangely, the judges didn't seem to see it that way, stating that potential wasn't part of the consideration for Sho, as they needed someone who could debut now. In the end, because Sho did not meet the judges' expectations, he received 0 out of 3 stars, which is the lowest possible score on the show, while his teammate Kaito got 1 star. And all of this obviously raises the question, how does someone look like a good dancer? Could it be because he was half black? That seemed to be what the judges were implying, especially because right after Sho and Kaito's stage, a Korean trainee named Kim Sung-ju performed. And despite singing and dancing significantly worse than Sho, he was still given 1 star just because the judges thought he was cute and had potential, which if you recall was something they said didn't matter for Sho. What was most heartbreaking about this was that Sho had actually said in a previous interview that he had faced challenges when trying to become an idol because many people automatically assumed that he was a hip-hop artist based on his appearance. And sadly, that seemed to be exactly what the judges were doing once again. Considering the Starlight Boys' global audience, it was no surprise that these double standards rubbed viewers the wrong way, causing many people to accuse the judges of racism. But things only went from bad to worse in episode 2, when the Starlight Boys, or rather the Squidlight Boys, subjected its trainees to a brutal challenge that, I kid you not, literally resembles something you'd see on the Squid Games. The challenge in question was called the Signal Song Mission, where the trainees had to get evaluated by performing the theme song of the show, and only 56 out of 68 trainees would advance to the next round. Sounds pretty standard, right? Except there was a twist. Instead of performing one by one, all of the trainees had to perform at the same time on this massive stage. And until they were picked by the judges, they had to keep dancing to the song on loop infinitely.
What in the actual
Initially, all the trainees tried to impress the judges by dancing with as much energy as they could. But as the rounds progressed, you could visibly see them becoming more and more tired. Trainees were gasping for air, collapsing to the ground, and some even had to use inhalers. Yet they were still pushed to continue dancing, with judges even telling the trainees to smile through their tears. The sight of these trainees breaking down was so awful that even the contestants who had already been picked started crying while watching their fellow trainees struggle. And eventually, one of the contestants, Sun Yinghao, could no longer watch from the sidelines and bravely called for a stop to the challenge.
我们是人，我们不是机器，我们不是机器。
But unfortunately, he was quickly dismissed by Judge Yi Seung-gi, who claimed that trainees should persevere because idols regularly perform up to 30 songs in their concerts. And he even said that by feeling tired, these trainees were, quote, taking away the audience's rights to enjoy a performance. As a result, the challenge kept going for a total of 20 rounds, which given the length of the song, meant that some trainees were dancing for up to an hour straight. And reports stated that a few contestants even had to be admitted to hospital afterwards due to the exhaustion. The whole episode was honestly quite disturbing. Like, I understand giving the trainees difficult challenges to help them improve, but the problem was that in the case of the Signal Song mission, it was not only cruel, but also plain unnecessary. And I call it unnecessary because first of all, the fact that all the contestants were performing at the same time meant that it was impossible to judge their live vocals. So this was really only a dance evaluation. But even as a dance evaluation method, it was not efficient because there's no way that 7 judges could have evaluated all 68 contestants at once, meaning that most of the contestants were likely just wasting their energy dancing away without even being seen. And it almost felt like the position that you were dancing at mattered even more than your actual skills. The structure of this challenge was just so flawed, and if anything, it was clearly only done this way to entertain the viewers, which is what makes this whole thing feel so dystopian and almost Squid Game-like. And this brings me to what Yi Seung-gi said. The fact that he said the trainees should not take a break because they'd be, quote, taking away the audience's rights to enjoy a performance makes us viewers sound so sadistic and exactly like those Squid Game VIPs, which I don't know where he got that impression from, but I certainly don't think that way. Like, obviously I want the artist to work hard and put on a good performance, but not if it means that they're collapsing and fainting. And thankfully, it seems like most viewers agree with me on this. The episode has since sparked widespread outrage. People are criticizing the producers as well as Yi Seung-gi and the other judges for endorsing the abuse, and many are even choosing to boycott the rest of the show. It's unfortunate because the Starlight Boys had so much potential, with a great budget and a bunch of super talented contestants, but its numerous scandals have completely tainted the image of the series, and it's sad to know that due to the widespread boycott of the show, the contestants on the Starlight Boys may not be getting the exposure that they deserve. And now, the worst survival show. This show had over 100 contestants.
Produce 101 Marty.
也有可能是 Mix 9 或者 The Unit.
And engaged in deceptive voting practices.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the Produce guys.
It's Up to You. Up to You is a survival show held by Africa TV, which if you do not know, Africa TV is a live broadcasting website most well known for its gaming and adult content. I think you know where this is going. The show first started airing in November of 2022, but despite its low viewership, it somehow decided to come back for a second season in May of 2023. And fun fact, I was actually approached by Africa TV to react to this season. But after checking out the quality of season 1, I promptly rejected the offer. So to keep things brief, both seasons basically went the same way. You had a group of about 100 contestants who would go through a series of auditions and challenges to form a 5-member girl group. Now, considering the fact that this was a survival show held by Africa TV, it shouldn't be all that surprising that many of the contestants ended up being adult streamers who were already on the platform. And personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with this. In fact, making this a survival show for an 18+ group could have been a concept that really made the show stand out. But the problem was, Up to You never marketed themselves as an 18+ show. Instead, they went on platforms like All Kpop and Naver to advertise their audition, which lured in tons of unsuspecting young fans who had no idea what Africa TV was. As a result, we got a bunch of very young kids competing alongside adult streamers. And this became a problem when some of the adult streamers ended up doing things like this in front of their underage competitors. Aside from the fact that such a performance is obviously inappropriate for minors to be viewing, this also raises concerns about whether the adult contestants were forced to sexualize themselves for views.
This girl is full-on twerking with no safety shorts. It's just standard white underwear. And I can pretty safely tell you that the producers made this choice, not her.
Now, I have tried to do my research on this, but the verdict remains unclear. On one hand, it does appear as if all the contestants who did these sexy dancers were already adult streamers to begin with, but then at the same time, just because someone is an adult streamer obviously doesn't mean they can't be further exploited by the show, so we really don't know. What I can say for sure though is that the quality of performances on this show were once again very, very bad. Arguably even worse than TimeTurner, which is already a really low bar. Now obviously I have to preface that there were some talented contestants, but for the most part, not only did a vast majority of these contestants not sing throughout the entire show, at least half of them couldn't even dance. Just take a look at some of these performances.
볼 수가 없는 필립 게임 두둑에 빠뜨리기도 왜 사람 구실도 확인 날 부르는 걸
Honestly, the quality of talent was truly something else, and it wasn't helped by the fact that most of the judges weren't even from the music industry. Most of them were just gamers and adult streamers from Africa TV, who basically couldn't offer any technical advice to actually help the contestants improve. Meanwhile, Yoon Jin-hee, who's the CEO of a K-pop academy and perhaps one of the only qualified judges, seemed to prioritize weight more than anything else, constantly asking even the underage trainees to go on diets, which was extremely disappointing to watch.
그래서 혹시 다음 무대 계속 올라가게 되면 계속 다이어트를 하면서 멋진 모습을 보여줄 수 있게 준비를 꼭 해주셔야 될 것 같고요. 현재 다이어트가 필요한 상태, 현재 상태에서는 사실 데뷔나 그리고 연습생으로서의 오디션을 합격하는 것이나 이런 것들이 불가능한 상태거든요.
But okay, enough about the dreadful episodes. Ultimately, at the end of both seasons, the winners ended up being an odd mix of everything, ranging from primary school kids all the way to sexy cam girls. Honestly, both lineups looked absolutely comical. But on a more serious note, this also raised concerns about the fact that kids as young as 10 or 11 would be debuting in a K-pop group, under Africa TV no less. And there was even this viral video circulating around which seemed to accuse Africa TV of forcing the girls into becoming adult streamers after their debut.
On K-Profiles, I checked out all the members' Africa TV and Instagram accounts, and they all have one thing in common. They are either deactivated or sexually infused. A lot of the live streams on the site are explicitly 19+, so it makes you wonder why if they're just meant to be singing and dancing. What I think is that they do choose winners and then give them their song as promised, but that this somehow ends up with a contract that binds them to Africa TV.
All of this just greatly worried fans and led many to question what exactly happened to the winners of the show. Well, I did a ton of digging and I'm happy to report that the answer, thankfully, is nothing. Because both groups were actually disbanded the very same day they were formed. Hey guys, so it's me post-editing here, and I realized that I never actually clarified whether the winners were forced into adult streaming after the disbandment like the video implies. But basically, based on my research, there seems to be no evidence of this. While it is indeed true that a few of these winners did adult streaming, each and every single one of them were actually already adult streamers on Africa TV even prior to the show. Not to mention, a majority of these winners also never touched adult streaming either before or after their win. So it really doesn't seem as if they were bound to the platform by Africa TV, but rather everyone just went back to living their normal lives after the disbandment. And And I'm not saying all of this because I'm in support of UPTOYOU. Clearly, I think it's a shit show. That's why it's on this list. But at the same time, it's also important to remain objective and get the facts straight, especially when it comes to accusations as severe as trafficking. So everyone can breathe a sigh of relief. I hope this clears things up, and let's get back to the video. As it turns out, Africa TV was never interested in managing a K-pop group, and they had always planned to disband both groups as soon as they were formed. Although this important fact was never directly disclosed to audiences, and was only quietly added to their website weeks after the show had already ended. So, okay, if the aim wasn't to create a girl group, then why did Africa TV even bother creating this show? Well, if you guessed that it was to fish for paid votes, you would be right. Because much like TimeTurner, UPTOYOU also required their viewers to buy votes for the contestants, this time using Africa TV's platform currency known as star balloons.
이번 회차는요, 우리 유저분들의 투표가 매우 중요합니다. 꼭 투표해 주시길 바라면서 지금 바로 시작합니다. UPTOYOU!
I guess Africa TV realized that people wouldn't be quite as invested if they realized that this was just a normal talent show, so they tried to capitalize on the survival show trend by claiming that they too were debuting a girl group. And sadly, many fans paid for votes based on this false premise. Essentially, the whole thing was borderline a scam. Although I have to use that term lightly because UPTOYOU's winners technically debuted for a day. So what they did cannot legally be considered fraud. I know, it's so scummy. But hey, on the bright side, at least we can rest assured that the winners, especially the underaged ones, weren't trapped in exploitative contracts like fans had speculated, which is definitely a huge relief. And they did receive cash prizes, so at least they walked out with some sort of compensation. What can I say? It's probably the first time I'm glad a debut failed. I could honestly go on and on about this show, but overall, UPTOYOU exemplifies everything that can go wrong with the survival show format. From poor production to half-assed performances, to exposing minors to inappropriate content, to tricking fans into paying for votes, UPTOYOU is like all the bad things rolled into one. So if it was up to me, I can only hope that this disastrous survival show will never come back for a third season. So those were the worst survival shows I've ever watched, but they're by no means the only bad ones. And overall, I feel like the quality of survival shows has really decreased over time. On one hand, you've got so many big budget survival shows coming out that they feel the need to distinguish themselves from one another by coming up with ever more bizarre formats and challenges. And that was probably what led producers to come up with the horrific Signal song Mission, or to come up with concepts like My Teenage Girl, which literally revolves around the fact that all the contestants are teenagers. Pretty creepy if you ask me. While on the other hand, small companies are also trying to jump on the survival show craze, but they're doing even worse. Not only are their shows poorly produced and of no benefit to their contestants, many of them also seem to be taking advantage of the survival show format to extract money from fans in the form of paid votes. Like, no, as an audience member, I do not need idols collapsing on stage for a performance. What I need is to not get scammed by these exploitative voting systems, thank you. So yeah, I've really lost hope for survival shows, but I'm sure there's still some good ones out there. So if you have any good recommendations, then be sure to leave them in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. As usual, all of my research notes will be on Patreon. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Thank you for watching, and special thanks to my Patreon members for supporting my channel. If you'd like to watch reaction videos and other bonus content, then be sure to check that out on my Patreon.